Welcome everyone to the webinar, Connecting with Youth Before, During, and After COVID-19. As Kristen said, I'm Sarah Johnson from the New England Prevention Technology Transfer Center. And today we have a panel of folks from around New England who are going to be talking a little bit about how they were connecting with youth before COVID-19, how they're connecting during these physically distant times, and maybe some of their plans for the future as well. If you do have questions for specific panelists, as Kristen indicated, you can put those in the questions tab and just indicate which panelist you wanted that question to go to if it's for a specific person. So I'm excited to introduce our panelists. I'm going to give just a brief introduction of each person because they're going to have the opportunity to give you more details about their work as we go through the next hour. So joining us today, we have Deborah Lake, Prevention Program Manager at the Governor's Prevention Partnership in Connecticut, Jessica Summer, Youth Project and Fundraising Coordinator at Burlington Partnership for a Healthy Community in Vermont, and we have Marissa Carlson, Executive Director at the New Hampshire Teen Institute. So welcome to all of our panelists. We're going to just take a few minutes for you to talk a little bit about your work. And we are going to start with Deborah.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. As mentioned, my name is Deborah Lake, and I am the Prevention Program Manager at the Governor's Prevention Partnership. Sarah, will you actually do the next slide, please? All right, and so the Governor's Prevention Partnership we are a public-private nonprofit. We are a statewide nonprofit which enhances the youth prevention and mentoring framework in Connecticut through trainings, technical assistance, and collaborative approaches. We connect people, programs, and communities to the resources they need to positively affect the lives of Connecticut's youth. And so what all that means is that a lot of our programs are not necessarily direct service, but we are supporting the local prevention councils and the youth service bureaus across the state with kind of higher level policies and procedures and backgrounds. So some of my other colleagues on this panel will be talking a lot more specifically about youth. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we're supporting and engaging not only our youth, but our families and providers during this time and into the future. So we work with our Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, and we are the statewide affiliate of Mentor. And really our work over the last few months has really focused on how connection is prevention from the statewide perspective. So our main areas of work are in schools with mentoring programs, and then also we do a lot of trainings with corporate businesses. So one of the first things that we did when COVID first started happening is that we immediately engaged with our mentoring partners via online forums. And so our Mentoring Friday forums gave guidance to program coordinators and mentors on how to move in-person mentoring into the virtual space. We work with programs that are both school-based, but then also just community-based programs. And prior to this, some of you asked how people are addressing confidentiality and safety. And so in a couple of slides, I'll show you, you're welcome to go onto our website and make use of our resources, because our forums, we develop some examples and guidelines on platforms to use, some security things to keep in mind, etiquette in terms of how to do it in the mentoring relationship, policies, and some other best practices. So again, you're welcome to make use of any of those resources. But of course, make sure you check in with your own policies and regulations and legal counsel as needed. will you actually go to the next slide, Sarah? Thanks. Or next page. So as an example, another example is that we are working with a lot of our family life centers. So again, these are programs that focus on parents, which then help their young people. So we're also doing a lot of our resources in both English and Spanish. And we've been doing some different webinars and training. And looking into the future, our mentoring collaboratives are actually starting a virtual recruitment campaign. The New Haven Public School District just within the last 2 months did a new survey and identified over 2,000 youth who could benefit from a mentor relationship. So we're working really hard to increase the capacity in that region. We also, of course, this month has been Mental Health Awareness Month, and also we had National Prevention Week. And so we've been focusing on partnering with our schools and other resources across the state to support parents, and especially some of the resources that parents are used to having in the school setting that now they're not necessarily accessing at home, but they actually still have that resource. So Connecticut set up a Talk It Out line. So it's not a crisis helpline, but it's just a space where parents or adults can call and talk through, you know, the stress of being home with a toddler who, you know, needs constant supervision. That's me. But then also our mobile crisis unit. So if there is something that's more than just a, hey, I need a vent and get this off my chest, that, you know, families and parents can still access the mobile crisis unit, and they actually are still going out in person as needed. We have two programs. One's called E3 and the other is called the All Abilities Alliance, that we're working with the schools to integrate that into this social emotional learning curriculum across the state. And then, as I mentioned, we're doing our English and Spanish outreach with local family centers. We have a media outlet called CTN Vivo, which helped us share 30-second PSAs this month that all address, and they're all in Spanish with English subtitles, that address alcohol, vaping, bullying, and marijuana. And then we're currently thinking forward again, working with the Waterbury Police Athletic League or Activities League to create summer family peer groups. That way, you know, families can really work to support each other as they're moving forward and thinking about what they're doing with their youth. In the state of Connecticut, our summer camps won't be able to open for basically another 2 months. And of course, residential camps can't happen this year. So a lot of people are concerned, once school ends, what are they going to do with their kids? So another way that we are connecting with our youth during this month is our youth advisory board made some 30-second like PSA videos about what prevention means to them. And we're also working, we have another meeting coming up. We're going to be working on them doing some advocacy around trying to encourage people not to normalize substance use during this time. I think we've all seen all the memes about how much wine people need, and you know, I think one of my personal favorites is the picture of the coffee cup handing off the baton to the wine glass of like, you know, I can't function without something throughout my day. So thinking about how they can be advocates, even though, of course, we're being socially distanced. Can you go to the next slide? So this is an example of some of the resources and templates that are on our website that addresses policies and procedures. So here's a mentoring agreement in terms of engaging in virtual mentoring, as well as some of the virtual mentoring guidelines. Next slide. And then we created some, based off of mentor and other things, we've created some talking points. Again, this is meant to go out on social media, but it's just a quick infographic. And then also the Uplift at Home kit, based off of the Jordan Porco Foundation's Uplift kit. They focus on college-age students. And so, again, this is a way just to support yourself or your own mental health, which is something you can do with young people in your life. One more slide, the next slide. And this is our, it's just a picture of, so on our website, we have a coronavirus resource page. And so on that page, we have lots of different things, but we have a list of some creative virtual activities to do with you. So a lot of our mentors are making use of that as just ideas, but then also somebody did ask, you know, how do you stay in touch with somebody when they don't necessarily have access to the internet? And so one of our programs is actually doing a pen pal program. So the mentors are writing letters to their mentees. They are sending them to the program coordinator, and then the program coordinator will send it to the mentee, and then vice versa. The reason why they're doing that is just, again, to protect the safety and security of the youth. But it's a nice way for them to still be connected, but ensuring that confidentiality. And so those are just, that's a really, really quick overview of some of the things that we're engaged in Connecticut. And again, anybody is welcome to go onto our website to pull some of those resources. We have recorded webinars and chats, and then all the virtual activities that, again, anybody is welcome to pull from for inspiration. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Deborah. That was very rich in resources. So I'm sure a lot of folks will be following up on your website to take a look. So next we're going to move to Jessica Summer, and I'll let you dive right in, Jessica.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica Summer. I'm the Youth Project and Fundraising Coordinator for the Burlington Partnership for a Healthy Community up in Burlington, Vermont. And I work directly with middle and high school youth. We had 2 youth programming people on staff, so I was primarily responsible for the middle school work, but did support some of the high school work as well. So I'm just going to walk you through a little bit of what our programming used to look like when things were more normal and we were able to meet together in person, and how things are starting to shift. Our organization specifically supports Burlington youth and not other areas in the state, so we're really lucky that we've got some pretty strong relationships with our local kids. So this first slide here shows you a picture of some of our teens at one of our Friday night family dinners. So a typical school year for them is every Friday after school, they have an ATI meeting for about an hour, and then every other Friday night they have a teen dinner where they come together and they cook a meal. We provide the food, they choose what they want to cook. We help make sure that it's a healthy meal, and we help support the cooking in the community center, and then they get to hang out and play basketball or dance in the dance studio. It's a great partnership we have with the community center to allow that to happen. And then we have some pretty regular lunch groups happening at the high school, where a staff member will go over to the high school and make sure that we get some extra face-to-face time with students, especially if we haven't seen them in a meeting recently. If you can go to the next slide for me. And then for our middle school programs, this is the picture of one of our substance-free social events for our middle school students. And we have 2 middle schools in Burlington, so we meet once a week after school on Tuesdays at the community center for the middle school that's basically in the backyard of the community center, and then on Wednesdays at the other middle school. And then every other month we try to have a substance-free social event for each of them. It was originally set up so that once a month we would do something for each school, and it has worked out that we just do them every other month, but then 3 in a row, each for the different schools. We also are invited for regular tabling at lunches or other assemblies or school events as necessary to support programming with the schools. And then we also work really closely with them for prevention education in their health classes. So our staff gets to go and talk with them about tobacco and alcohol prevention as it's fitting into their regular health school curriculum. So we get to see all the kids in school there as well. You could move me to the next slide, please. So now I'm going to shift into how things have changed. Obviously, with COVID-19, we are doing things with remote and virtual work instead of getting to go directly to school and meet with our students. So this is a picture of our other youth programming coordinator, Tara. She coordinated our high school program. And this is a picture of her on a Google Meet call with some of our students. And then in her hand, she has her entry into an art competition that we were challenging our students to participate in called the hashtag BTB Wave. And it's a project that our whole coalition was doing for the community. Our logo for our coalition is a bunch of hands in really bright colors. So we were encouraging kids to print out or trace their hands and then decorate them to show things that they enjoy in the community or ways that they're staying healthy. Can you move us to the next slide, please? So one of the things that our high school group has really enjoyed is Flipgrid. This is a new program that we started using just with COVID, and it lets our students submit short videos of themselves so they can take like a Vine length video or sometimes a little bit longer. They chose to do a TikTok family challenge where they could do a special dance to a song of their choice with their family members. This is a secure website, so they can all see each other's posts, but it's not public to the rest of the internet. But students can also choose to share videos of themselves working on anything, and then we can add them to our Instagram page. So it's been a really interesting way to watch them get to have more of a say over what gets put on their ATI Instagram page. You could move us to the next slide, please. So we've had a pretty active Instagram page for about a year for our high school group that's maintained by our youth programming staff. And most of the posts that had been on there prior to COVID-19 have been talking about meetings or shouting out the work that our youth group has been doing with some pictures of them on Fridays at the meetings or Friday night dinners. And then we always have like a motivational Monday post from whatever celebrity they're really into that week. And since we've transitioned to more of our meeting times happening online, we've increased the number of posts and allowed students to have more say over what gets posted there. So they're submitting their own video content, and we have focused primarily on self-care and stress management so that we can share more health messages with them that are really relevant to what they're going through right now. You could put us on the next slide, please. So we've also gotten really into playing online games with them and trying to give them a space to have fun. So Tara put together this Kahoot quiz of questions about the kids in the group. So they all know the answers because they all know each other really well, but they really enjoy getting to see more pictures of themselves and getting to relive some of their favorite memories. And then this picture on the right, my husband actually coded us an apples to apples game that we can play online. So it's like a special secure room that we can go into and we can all play games with each other. And so we'll pull that up in one tab and then have a Google Hangout or Zoom conversation happening on another tab so that we can all talk to each other while we play. And the students have been really excited to get to play more games with each other. If you could put us on the next slide, please. And then this is a picture of one of the high school students' entries for our BTB Wave contest. It's the winning one. So I don't know how well you can see this picture here, but she traced her hand and wrote about her experiences this year being part of our Above the Influence group and how important it is to her that she and her family are really engaged in the group. One of the exciting things about this particular entry, she and 3 of her sisters are in our programs. So the 4 of them were working together on all of the entries that they submitted. And so we got some really great work out of them. It was really exciting to see so many of the people in her family that are so passionate about this work in our organization. If you could put us on to the next slide, please. And so we have continued to meet with them. We used to meet just once a week, and now we meet with them twice a week. So they have meetings every Wednesday and Friday afternoon, and we have shifted our times in the past month or so to accommodate Ramadan for our students. They asked to meet a little earlier in the day so that they still had time to meet with their families. Our last official meeting of the year was this past Friday. Our high school does a thing called year-end studies program. So they end the regular semester the Tuesday after Memorial Day, so today. And they're not doing a regular YES program this year, but they are going to go ahead and end traditional classes when they would have. So our students asked for their last official meeting of the year to be this past Friday, since it was the end of their school year. We had a virtual team dinner for them. So they all got to pick what they wanted for dinner. They requested Chinese food, and then our youth programming staff worked with them to order and have all of their food delivered to their house so that they could all eat together on the call. And then we have a college student who is our youth program advisor, and she goes to all the meetings of all the different groups. And she put together a digital yearbook with pictures of all the kids and the work that they've done this year. And we made awards for each of them since it's the end of the year. And then we did a bonus award because we have a graduating senior this year. So we did a little honoring of her and her time with our organization. And that's pretty much what we've been doing with our students. We've shifted to a lot of online and trying to meet them where they're at and being really flexible. So we changed our meeting times to make sure that they work with all of the different cultural obligations that our students have. We've shifted our Friday meetings to accommodate when schoolwork has to be turned in at the end of the week on Fridays. And it's been a lot of fun getting to see them take a little bit more ownership in their social media presence.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica. Oh, was this one, did we miss this one?
I think I forgot I put this one slide in of what we're looking forward to for the summer. So our students requested on Friday a weekly game or movie night so that they would have a place to still be together. They are a very social, very tight-knit group, and they really miss not being able to see each other all the time. And then we have a Teen Institute program here in Vermont that is usually the last week of June, and they're moving to an online group this year. And we're still waiting for more details, but we're going to offer that as an opportunity for students to participate, and then, of course, let them know of any other projects as they pop up that would be appropriate for student involvement.
Awesome, thank you. That was great. I love all the creative ways that you found to continue connecting, because I think sometimes people think, well, how can we connect? Let's just put everything on Zoom, but you found a lot of different ways to still get people together and still get people talking. And I love this apples to apples idea. I think that's so great that you were able to pull that together for them.
They have so much fun with the games.
Yeah. So we're going to move forward to Marissa Carlson, the Executive Director of New Hampshire Teen Institute. And Marissa, I'm excited that you got your webcam up and running.
I am as well. Awesome. Well, hi. So the New Hampshire Teen Institute, we do a number of things. So this slide is a picture of an example of what we would usually be getting ready for during this time. So we typically run 2 sessions of our summer leadership program for high school students each year, and those are week-long leadership development. Very much, I know a number of people here are familiar with like the Teen Institute model, so very much in line with that kind of mentorship opportunities, prevention education, peer mentoring education, opportunities to come together with people from around New Hampshire, other high school students from other communities outside of New Hampshire as well. to really form those great connections, get to know each other, and get a sense of what different communities and groups are doing, and really build their own skills and also build some of those awesome relationships as they move forward through their high school career or as they are about to start college. So our process of getting ready for that involves enlisting a number of youth and adult volunteers. So that happens pretty early in the spring. We usually start around February or March for that. So we are typically getting those folks up to speed. There's an application process. We're picking a diverse staff. We're making sure that they feel trained and ready to go as we approach the summer. Typically at the same time, we're also doing school programs. So, you know, we do a lot of workshops around prevention topics and other leadership topics for Project Safeguard style days, you know, end of the year educational events that folks have, sometimes just sort of end of the year events that schools have where they're trying to mix a little bit of education with a little bit more of a fun format to kind of shake things up at the end of the school year. We're also typically at this time of year doing professional development with adults who work with youth, and then also carrying out typically the last of our season of parenting programs. So we do a couple different types of parenting programs for parents of students ages 12 to 17. So as much as we work with pretty diverse age groups, we really are focused on those middle and high school age youth as who we're hoping to benefit and who we're hoping to empower to be awesome, healthy leaders. So we would be doing this as kind of everything started to happen in March and April. We really wanted to make sure that we were still working towards getting the summer leadership program ready until we heard more from the camps that we work with, the college campuses that we work with, and you know, CDC and state guidelines. So until about a week and a half ago, we were still moving on track to do at least one session. And then obviously it turned out that was not going to be the case, as many folks have already talked about, different camp regulations. In our case, we found out that both of the facilities we were going to use this summer were going to be closed for conferences, for the rest of this season. So we have pivoted a little bit in that way. But we've definitely in the meantime been trying to stay connected with the folks we work with in different ways. We typically, because our volunteers are pretty spread out and our alumni are pretty spread out, we have a lot of online interactions with folks anyway. But for a lot of people, because our events tend to be these really intensive, like, a week of working with other youth or mentoring youth, or really these kinds of like dynamic in-person events, we're not necessarily a part of everyone's everyday life and that day-to-day. But with the removal of those kinds of intense, large group in-person events, we had to kind of switch up how we were making those contacts. So if you want to go to the next slide. So really early on, probably, I think, like March 18th, let's say, we decided to start doing some volunteer and alumni Zoom Hangouts. They follow the same format all the time. They're totally drop-in. We talk for 20 minutes, like just catching up, talk about whatever, and then we dance party for 10 minutes, and then we're off. So that's our setup. It's really, focused on the self-care and the connection aspect of things. When we started, we felt like we would maybe bring in both kind of volunteers from our programs and also alumni from our programs who hadn't necessarily ever come back to staff a program. It turned out that wasn't really like what we got. So it turned out that they have been much more geared towards our volunteer population. So we have about 100 volunteers at any given time who kind of rotate through our programs, when they're available as things work with their own school and work schedules. And those are folks from ages 15 to, probably about almost 70, but I would say the bulk of our folks are really in that like 15 to 30 age range. And about 85% of our volunteers are alumni of one of our programs themselves. So there's definitely a crossover. But what we were finding with the Zoom Hangouts was that it really was rarely just alumni who hadn't actually come back to be part of that staffing community as well, which kind of made sense in terms of who was kind of angling to come back together. So we've been doing these. We do a Monday afternoon at 4, we do a Wednesday morning at 9, and then a Friday night at 9 p.m. To try to kind of hit a variety of people's schedules and circadian rhythms when people feel like hanging out and dance partying. Just as a side note, if you look in our middle row there, and our third person over from the left, or first person in from the right, Asher was supposed to join us today on this panel, and unfortunately had a pet emergency. And so he wasn't able to join us, but he wanted to say hello, and he's been a really active member of these calls and Hangouts and other activities we've done. So he says hello and is sorry that he can't be with us. Let's see. One of the things that we've heard, just in thinking about the Zoom calls as well, we probably get about, I'd say, between 8 and 20 people per call. And we've been running them 3 times a week, like I said, ever since March, mid-March. One of the things we've heard, at times we've kind of been like, should we keep going? Like, is this, at those times we're seeing some of the same people and over and over again. But what's been interesting is we've heard on a number of occasions, people who've been in touch with us for other reasons, who said, even though I haven't really felt up to joining one of the Zoom calls, I love that they're there. I love that there's something that I could log on to, if I was feeling like it or if it worked with my schedule. So we've kept them going because we sort of heard that they're not just necessarily good for the folks who are connecting on them, but also good for our community in general. Okay, the next slide. So we've definitely, as other folks have said, been very active Instagram and Facebook wise. One of the things we've done is gone back in our photo archives from other programs, and I pulled a couple shots from our series of pandemic survival tips. So we, kind of slightly tongue-in-cheek, but obviously sharing some good facts around what are some of those things you can do if you're feeling bored or if you're feeling stressed, and just some good public health messages like backing up and keeping your distance. So we've done some things around that in terms of what we've posted. And we also, I think similarly to other organizations, our program coordinator is a young alumni of our programs. And so she's been really kind of taking the reins on the social media stuff as a college student who's also pretty involved with the organization. Another thing we've been doing social media wise that has seemed to be helpful is probably once a week or so, maybe, we've been doing just a quick emoji check-in. So we invite folks on Instagram and Facebook. We'll put a series of 5 emojis, everything from I'm doing awesome, to a sort of meh, I'm okay, and then down to I'm kind of struggling and could use some checking in. And so we've put that up there, and what's been great is that for the folks who are on that struggling side, we've been either able to see other members of that alumni and volunteer family kind of jump and love on them, or it's been when things have seen, it's also been that kind of oh, who should we maybe follow up with, make sure things are going okay, and see if there's anyone that we need to connect with some resources. And so that's helped us out. We've definitely connected some folks with some kind of family safety resources since that time, and it kind of came from this pretty casual check-in that allows people to participate in a really quick way, I think, with the community, but then has allowed for follow-up if it seems like it's needed, either from us, helping connect them with resources at that higher level, or just some nice words from people who've seen that you're having a tough day. So those are some of the things we've been doing in terms of social media and checking in online. If you want to go to the next slide, we're kind of rethinking now and re-envisioning. We don't have a great title for this program yet, but some sort of summer leadership program, alternative virtual reunion event of some kind. So we are working on some programming for, I think similar to what Jessica was talking about, working on some programming for later in the summer, the week in August when we would have had one of our sessions of the summer leadership program. We did a lot of talking as an admin team for that, and we felt that trying to excuse me, move that full curriculum online would be a disservice to what it should be, because so much of it, as I said, is that forming connections with folks from further apart, and not wanting to, number one, have have folks not get the benefit of those connections and really kind of just get the educational parts of things, as nice as those are, but also there's a lot, as folks know, we're talking about things like addiction in the family, or dating violence, or some of these big things that come up in that prevention and peer mentoring realm. If we talk about something and we're in that camp community with well-trained staff and a crisis counselor on hand, if something comes up for someone, we're really able to take care of them and connect them with outside resources if we need to, versus we were concerned about a Zoom call or an online format. The camera goes off and those folks are maybe still in that situation that isn't as safe, and we don't have that, but maybe we've just opened up some topics that are either hard to deal with or they're not in a safe place to deal with them. So we wanted to really stay away from running the program as usual with brand new participants. So what we're really gearing towards instead is something that's a little bit more that kind of reunion for younger alumni. We're looking at the parts of the program that are kind of the warm fuzzy memories that people look back on, that maybe aren't as content driven, but are sharing poems in the room, or getting a chance to like think about one's own personal style of leadership and kind of see where they fit in the world. And sort of thinking about it, what of those things are a little bit more translatable to a virtual space, are going to be safe to translate, and are going to be kind of the things that people want to reconnect with. And then also the idea of having some presentations and workshops that people can participate in, where we can kind of keep that level of safety, but also be sharing some new prevention and leadership development information. So that's what we're kind of in the works on now. And as that develops, hopefully we'll have a little more sense of how much we can do content-wise, community building-wise, and kind of where those two meet. So yeah, I think that's the big overview of what our 3 months or so have been looking like.
Awesome. Thanks, Marissa. I love how your program is really strategizing about meeting people where they're at, because people are really in a lot of different places right now, emotionally and physically. And I think it's really great that you're really finding ways to support people where they are. So that's awesome. So thank you to our panelists for telling us a little bit about how you're moving through this COVID situation, and a little bit about how you envision the future. So we have just over 15 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we do address the questions that have come up in the chat box. So because the panelists did answer a lot of the questions that we received before this presentation, I'd like to hop on to some of those questions, if that's okay with our panelists. Great. So the first question is from Marissa specifically. This is from Terry Treg. Terry asks, she worked with the Teen Institute in Rhode Island for over 15 years. Was sad to see it close. Would love to talk to you about how to keep it going. And Terry provided their email. So if you would love to connect after, then that would be a great connection.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Yes, let's definitely email about that, Terry.
Awesome. So a question for all panelists. So we'll start with Debra. What did you find is the best way to connect to students? And I know you're a little bit more in the policy realm, Debra, but if you know of like an app or a website, this person was told by some students that not everyone checks their emails, and they were using the Remind app, but it wasn't very popular. So if you have any ideas.
Sorry. So we actually, for at least our mentoring, some of our programs have gone to FaceTime, and some of them have used other apps such as like just WhatsApp. And we haven't actually recommended Zoom in the past, though now that Zoom security with their most recent release is much improved. So, you know, you could think about that if Zoom is something that you're interested in. Again, a lot of our mentoring relationships are already more on the sensitive side. And so we really wanted to make sure they're safe. I'm personally very, very interested in I've used Kahoot before, but I'm interested in what Jessica mentioned that they've been using. So I would, you know, again, some of ours they've also used phone calls to get connected and kind of figure out the best way to do the relationship from there.
Awesome. And Jessica, I know you mentioned a couple. I don't know if you can maybe reiterate those for us, and if you had any other thoughts on apps or websites that are really great for connection.
Sure. So most of our high school group is very lucky, and most of them have cell phones. They don't always have cell phone service, but they all have ways to be able to text each other and our staff over Wi-Fi without having phone service, and are constantly talking to each other. We have several different group chats of all the students, some of which are phone numbers and some of which are email addresses, and it still gets sent to them. We've used Remind in the past, but haven't been using it as frequently lately, although we're hoping to get back to that. And the students really enjoy talking to each other all the time, so they do a lot of starting conversations without our staff. So they'll FaceTime each other. There's apparently a group of 8 students that FaceTimes each other almost every day to talk about homework or how school's going, or if they're stressed out about something. So it's really great to see that they're making these bonds and keeping in touch with each other on their own. We hear the same feedback about kids not checking their email. They're just completely overwhelmed and inundated with messages from the school district. Many of them are getting like 5 and 6 emails a day from the same teachers, just trying to check in and see how things are going. So we send emails too, but we also rely on using Instagram to remind kids about meetings, and we always send a text message with the meeting link. Our school district has required, we started using Zoom, they've required us to use Google Meet. We have a really close relationship with the school district, so we actually have a school district email address that lets us be able to use Google Meet, because until I think it was partway through last week, you didn't have access to Google Meet with a free email account. So it was great that we still had access to that through the school district for them. And that's mostly how we've been keeping in touch, with a lot of texting and social media with our students. They also have a Snapchat group for themselves, but we don't have any staff that are part of Snapchat.
Great, thanks. Marissa, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that list? That's a great list so far.
Yeah, I feel like the list, we use a lot of that. Definitely, yeah, email. It always, you know, we just typically send email at this point if there's a lot of information that like we want people to have in print all at once, or if there's attached documents. But we almost always then just like follow up with a group text to anyone who, you know, any like group of volunteers that were part of that, or group of alumni, just to say, hey, check your email, there's something there. I would say during regular times when we have different events for alumni and volunteers to sign up for, we found using Sign Up Genius to be really helpful. It's easy for folks to access it really quickly from either mobile or desktop, laptop applications, and has been really great for you know, kind of showing people their own kind of list of events they're doing with us, and also kind of seeing who else has signed up for the same thing I'm signed up for. So that's been really helpful. We're not using it right now because it's much more geared towards, you know, in-person things where we're looking for some number of volunteers to join us, but that has been really great. And I was gonna think, we've started kind of experimenting with Asana as a kind of task and reminder app. That right now has been for like pretty small groups of folks we've been working with, but one of our volunteer groups that's working on a project with New Hampshire nonprofits, which is 3 youth and 3 adults working on a volunteer engagement project, has started using that, and they've liked that for kind of group task management.
Awesome. So that's kind of a wide variety of apps. So hopefully that's helpful to the participant. I have a couple questions that are specifically for Jessica. The first one is, are they interested in trying to connect with a CT? So I'm not sure if there's more context there that I am not aware of that you know, Jessica. And the other question is, how are you hosting your movie nights, and do you have to purchase movie rights?
So we actually just had a conversation about movie rights this morning. My understanding has been that if you have a closed link, so only specific people are invited, it can't be posted anywhere online, that it's similar as if we were like hosting a movie night in someone's house, where it's like specific group of people. So we have not purchased movie licenses, but we are going to look into that to be able to have something that could be more open to other people in the group. And we've just been doing that over Zoom. We did use Netflix Party for a movie, where Netflix Party requires you to use a computer. So our students all have Chromebooks assigned from the school district. And the only students who could participate were students who had their own Netflix account, because each person has to be signed into their own Netflix to be able to use Netflix Party. But for any community where your students are likely to have access to Netflix, that is an option that's available to you, and doesn't require any movie license. It's a free Chrome extension that you can download, and then one person starts the Netflix Party, and you can email a link to everybody else, and then they just click on the link, and then there's a little NP in the corner next to the address bar, and if you click on that, it drops you into a chat room so that you can all text each other using your computer while you're watching the movie on screen. And you can set that up so that whoever started the party has sole control over being able to pause or stop the movie, which I would highly recommend if you're working with a group of students, that you maintain control of that, so that people aren't stopping the movie if they decide to go to the bathroom or get a cup of popcorn or whatever, like, so that everybody's on the same page. So that's an option that definitely doesn't require purchasing any kind of licensing or anything. And then I don't know what CT means, so I'm not sure how to answer that question.
She actually gave her email address, so you guys can connect about that after the webinar. I have one more question actually for you, Jessica, and then I'd like to ask just kind of a wrapping up question of the panelists. So the last question is if you can speak a little bit more about the Flipgrid you had talked about, and how the question is, how are you able to upload youth developed content with safety? In other words, with parent permission to do so.
So all of the students who participate in our program and send us materials for us to put on Instagram, we have signed releases from all of their parents. So their parents know that any content that we generate because they're coming to meetings or anything that their students are participating in could result in media coverage. And we have blanket permission to be able to use that on any social media channel, use that with the media and appear on TV, put it in a newsletter, on our website, anything with the school district. So we have a pretty blanket media release that we rely on. And so far, we have not had any issues with students that don't have that paperwork filled out who are trying to submit anything. But the way Flipgrid works is you can set that to be as secure or not secure as you want. So it's a free program that you can just go to the website and sign up for one with your email address. And then you can choose to restrict that to just to your school. So when we set that up, we can restrict it. So Tara and I have access with our Gmail email addresses, but students have to submit things using their school email address. So it only allows things from the Burlington School District website to be uploaded, and then no one else has access to that except for us. So they have to be on our list of students to be able to upload anything or to look at that. So that's one of the ways that we keep our students safe with that.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So just to kind of round out the presentation today, I just want to give each of the panelists an opportunity to just say a few words about what you have learned during this experience that you feel like is something you want to take forward into the future of prevention with you. So something that you feel like maybe has changed your practice or changed how you connect with people or changed how you see the folks you're working with, that you feel like you have benefited from and you can use that in your practice in the future. So we can start with Deborah.
Usually I'm better at muting than unmuting myself. I am more used to Zoom. I think for us and our team, we've actually been able to connect a little bit more with some of our mentors and the youth that we work with. It's one of those kind of odd things where a lot of times we're more focused in certain ways about what we're really trying to do and some of the messaging that we're trying to get across. And so, you know, I think we were lucky in that this past year we've actually been working really hard to do more virtually. And little did we know that we were setting ourselves up for this. And so I think this is just a really good excuse. You know, I would much rather be in a room full of people where I can see your faces and, you know, we can have those in-person interactions. But I think a lot of this has just shown us that we can still get our work done, we can still do the connection, and we can still really benefit from each other's knowledge.
Perfect. Thank you, Deborah. Jessica, did you have something you want to add about what you're going to take into the future with you?
For me, I think the biggest lesson has been go with the flow and be flexible. Things are changing so quickly, and what works one week might not work the next week, and just being able to meet students where they're at. So like my job is to make sure that our kids know that they are supported and cared about, and anything I can do to make that happen and that connection exist, I'm down for. So that means I'm getting to learn a lot of new technology and learning to be really flexible. And I think that flexibility is going to serve me well going forward.
And how powerful to show them how much you really are there to support them with that flexibility in such a difficult time. Absolutely. And Marissa, did you want to add something about what you're going to take with you into the future?
Yeah, you know, I think we've really tried to put a priority on being gentle with ourselves and gentle with the folks we work with. I think that we, because so much of our normal work we do is planning like big events with tons of moving pieces and lots of action happening and lots of fast-paced stuff, it's been kind of a step back to say, you know what, we're not developing a week-long thing that looks at addressing like every risk factor and every protective factor we possibly can within this short amount of time. And you know, we really tried to take this dialing back to, we want the members of our community and the youth that we work with to come out of this as, you know, healthy and as feeling connected as possible. And since connection is such a challenge right now, we really, you know, focused on that. And I think while we typically do anyway, I think it's really highlighting that like connection as that baseline and creating those safe communities as a baseline. And that's going to be, you know, even when all of this is over, whenever that time is, that's always going to set the stage for more education and more effective learning and more effective development, is if people are feeling connected with that one person or that small group or, you know, that large group of people that they're with. So I think really focusing on that has been really important for us.
That's great. And I love that modeling of taking care of yourselves and showing by what you're doing how the youth can take care of themselves as well. Great. Well, I want to say thank you to our panelists for being here today. I've learned a lot, and I've been working with you about what you're doing now and what you're doing in the future. And I wish all three of you the best of luck.